when I was studying in Crawford back in the late 90s, I was studying painting and was coming from that sort of background. But it was also at a time when Photoshop, my Wacom tablet and all of this suddenly came available, and it opened up loads of new possibilities at the time. It was also new stuff, so there wasn't this sort of preconceived idea of this is what digital art is and digital art looks like. And there was a liberty to cross boundaries and break into new spaces between what was, you know, photographic, painterly, etc. So at that stage, I started working with photo composites, taking a lot of photographs in particular environments, blending them together to create narrative pieces. And so that was the beginning of all of that. Subsequent to that, I also got into working with other technologies, including 3D modeling and animation rendering and all of that, which is something that is I still do in a lot of different contexts. There's parallels between some of the pieces from the early Photoshop stuff and the 3Ds, in that they're allowing me to create alternative environments to play out different possibilities in a very liberal way of working. Most people at this stage would be familiar with computer 3D renderings in terms of movies, animations, and video game graphics, and maybe even architectural visualization and that kind of thing. So that's a technology that I've been working with for a while. And one of the aspects of that is the ability to create 3D models from photographs. There's a process called photogrammetry. If you take lots and lots of photographs of an object from multiple angles, there's computer software that can rebuild a highly detailed 3D model from that process. And with the Joanna picture, I had gotten the opportunity to work with a 3D lab in London, which allowed us to bring people in and to pose within the lab. And this lab is, this is a dome of cameras, effectively, a room surrounded by cameras that are all high resolution, and they all fire off together so that you can get a fully 3D model of a person at any point, which was a great toy to play with in lots of ways. So at the time, I brought various people in to pose. There's a number of actors or people I knew in London, etc. And one of the things I did just out of this was to ask them to come with something internal going on, some thought, or I didn't want to know what. I just wanted them to. I wanted to see how that would come across in the 3D capture, and beyond that, I didn't have any plans or preconceptions. I just wanted to see what would come out of it. So having completed that, there was a number of these 3D computer models that I had of people that just suggested interesting possibilities. So I was able to bring these 3D models into 3D computer software. And within that, you can create virtual environments, combine other 3D models, use lighting, camera. It's effectively like a miniature film studio within a computer. So that was the beginning of the process, and it was a case of spending a long time seeing what came from experimentation, what was suggested by the 3D model of the person. And again, even though what the end result might look like a photographic print, it's actually much more like much more like something that is constructed as the way a painter might construct a painting. All of the elements are placed, scaled, lit in order to give that particular image. You also, even within the 3D software, you have photographic concepts. So depth of field in a camera, the focal length of a lens, all of these choices that a photographer will make can be made within that. So that was a long process, and I made a number of them, and some worked and some didn't. But the end result then is printed out, which requires about 4 days of computer processing to render just one image of the size that print was made, 1 meter high. So that was there was an awful lot of test renders and trial and error, etc., which is, maybe it's a luxury that you have working this way that as a photographer I could never have. You know, the classic idea of a photographer is somebody who can find or spot the decisive moment and know that that's going to be a picture, and that's something I could never do, photographing in that way. I think I need that slowness, which is afforded by this way of working. Prior to making this, I had been looking a lot at early photography, but certainly pre-Second World War photography of a time when sitters didn't necessarily have the preconception of being photographed that we have, this notion that they can already see themselves as a picture beforehand. So I was looking at, there's a Romanian photographer called Costica Axinte, whose work intrigued me. There was something there was something about people looking out of a picture at you as distinct from people looking at themselves being photographed. And there's this also, the idea of being photographed in front of artificial backdrops, which were explicitly artificial. So you have a backcloth landscape, hand painted, with somebody standing in front of it as if they're in the countryside. So I was looking at a lot of that kind of stuff, which fed into, particularly in the Joanna picture, this notion of somebody not being to scale in the environment that they're depicted in. I don't feel the need to, just because some new technological development comes out, I don't feel the need to follow that. It has to be something that can help working with something that resonates with me. But it is changing so rapidly. You know, I mean, what's happened in the past 20 years with technology is mind-boggling, particularly just for all of us ordinary people who go around now with cameras in our phones and take lots and lots of photographs all the time, and how we use and share photographs. I think what that does, interestingly, is it reflects back strangely on something like a piece of work that is slowly made and that is asking you as a viewer to not just recognize it, but to stop and maybe take a walk within it, and maybe maybe this kind of duality between the instant version of what image making is, particularly pictures of people are, versus maybe it almost brings a different focus on slower work. I like these to speak for themselves rather than I don't. What I always try and avoid is giving a definitive interpretation of something like that. I think that the fun for anybody encountering something like that is, oh, what's going on here? Oh, I think that means this. Or I'd like it to be an open space for a viewer. So for me to to say that it's doing a certain job is I kind of feel something I shy away from.